Psalm 38. Psalm of David to bring remembrance. Could also be to bring repentance, or it's at least about repentance. This is another psalm of David confessing his sin and pleading for the grace of God in his life in that moment. So starts off like this: O Lord, do not rebuke me in your wrath, nor chasten me in your hot displeasure. For your arrows pierce me deeply, and your hand presses me down. Right. So this is a consequence, a spiritual consequence of having sinned against the Lord, to feel the weight of the Lord's wrath on you, to kind of feel almost the doom of impending judgment kind of thing. Like doing something that you know was wrong, and you're pretty sure Dad does know, or Dad does know, and you're asking him, I know discipline's coming, but can you wait until you calm down? That's what you hope for, not that Dad doesn't start to discipline in his anger, but that he would calm down, and it's a good to look at it from that perspective. Good for us who have kids that need to be disciplined still. They're young enough to be disciplined. And to remember that, this plea from David to the Lord, it may not come out of our children's mouths, but to understand that we don't want to face God in His wrath and His anger. So why would we? And I don't say this like I had it all together, because there have been many times when I sat going, "Oh Lord, what did I do?" I'm pretty sure I just made the situation worse, and. So, it just, but that's David's plea. Lord, don't do this in your anger. Give me a little time. I already feel, I know your arrows have pierced me deeply. I already feel the pain deep inside. I already know the oppression of your hand on me. I know something's coming, but I don't want to feel the full force of your wrath. It says, there is no soundness in my flesh because of your anger, nor any health in my bones because of my sin. For my iniquities have gone over my head like a heavy burden. They are too heavy for me. My wounds are foul and festering because of my foolishness. I am troubled and I am greatly bowed down. I'm troubled and I'm bowed down greatly. I go mourning all the day long. For my loins are full of inflammation, and there is no soundness in my flesh. I am feeble and severely broken. I groan because of the turmoil of my heart. So David's sin has caused a physical consequence for him too. Some even suggest that maybe there's a sexual transmitted disease here when you look at parts of this. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but it could be. But the reality of it is, this isn't the first time or the only time that David talks about his sin and bearing the weight of his sin, causing him physical pain. And we know that can be, when we try to cover up, we try to hide our sin, that it can cause all kinds of problems for us. It could cause stomach problems. It can cause headaches, whatever. When we're trying to jump through the hoops of justification, our own justification, or when we're just completely trying to cover it up. So there's no soundness in his flesh because of your anger, nor any health in my bones because of my sin. So two things are playing in here, and he knows that God is not pleased with him. There's that, the disappointing, or the fact that he's disappointed the Lord. And the sin itself has caused him some problems. So just dealing with what he did. Where it says, for my iniquities have gone over my head like a heavy burden. They're too heavy for me. You get the picture of somebody carrying something on their head. That's not uncommon in the Middle East and in Africa to see people carrying water pots or whatever. That's one of the ways they carry them. And he's saying, this is a heavy burden I'm trying to carry. And it's, so he's probably feeling the tension in his neck and his shoulders. And we know, right, from extreme worry or fear or whatever, we know what it's like to have our body tense up. And my wounds are foul and festering because of my foolishness. I am troubled, I am bowed down greatly, so this is causing him pain, probably double over in his stomach even. I go mourning all the day long, so moaning. It says mourning, but it probably sounds like mourning if it's so severe that he's moaning and groaning all day long. For my loins are full of inflammation. There is no soundness in my flesh. If you struggle with any kind of arthritis or inflammation, you know what it's like for your hips to hurt, your knees to hurt, have a hard time to walk. You can be walking along just fine all day long, sit down for a little while, and then try to get back up and get going again. And you got to work it all out, like you just had a big workout and you've not. So. I groan because of the turmoil of my heart. I'm feeble and severely broken. I groan because of the turmoil of my heart. So this is all, there's just so much. He's not letting go of what he's done. He's at a point here where he's confessing or repenting. Maybe the confession part is already taking place, but the repenting of what he's done and really asking for the relenting of all of this stuff. So he's got to get it out. He needs to not keep hanging on to it, not hiding it, not justifying. He needs to just deal with, I was wrong, I did wrong, and I know that this is what's causing all this problem for me. So, Lord, all my desire is before you, and my sighing is not hidden from you. My heart pants, my strength fails me. As for the light of my eyes, it also has gone from me. So he's really feeling it. Right, he's feeling the weight in his heart. The stress of it is causing his heart to fail. Like he can't breathe well. He doesn't have the energy that he should have. Whatever. And his eyes, the light of his eyes, it's such a stress. It's affecting his eyesight. My loved ones. So now we're going to get into relationship consequences with this. He says, my loved ones and my friends stand aloof from my plague, and my relatives stand afar off. Those also who seek my life lay snares for me, or those who seek my hurt speak of destruction and plan deception all the day long. And so his loved ones are staying away from him. His friends, his relatives, they're staying away from him. They don't want anything to do with David in this condition. Now, I don't know if it's maybe it's because of his attitude. Certainly all of this stress and all of this trying to cover up would affect the way he responds to people. Or if the physical parts are, verse 5, the wounds are foul and festering because of my foolishness. If that's a literal problem, it's just gross to be around David then. So you find out, and evidently I would say that they probably understand why and how he's in this condition, or why he's in this condition. So that's the other part. And people will say, you made your bed, buddy. You're going to lie in it. You're going to have to ride this out on your own. You're not getting help from me kind of attitude, rather than try to minister to or restore. And maybe David's has a little reflection of King Saul in him too, and he's a hard person to deal with when he's in this condition, possibly. For whatever reason, though, those who would normally be close to him are standing away from him. And it would seem that the word has gotten back to his enemies, as those also who seek my life lay a snare for me, and those who seek my hurt speak of destruction and plan deception all day long. So the enemies of David know that he's weak right now. And whether he's gotten word that they're making plans, or whether he's just paranoid about that, because, if it was him and he had an enemy that he needed to be dealt with, then to find him in a moment of weakness would be the time to strike. So David knows that. He's a man of war and a king of war. And so he's at least assuming that his enemies are like that, and he may also have gotten news of plans against him. Verse 13, but I, like a deaf man, do not hear, and I am a mute who does not open his mouth. Thus I am like a man who does not hear, and in whose mouth is no response. Basically, I acted like a teenager. I didn't listen to the warnings. I knew better. I knew what was going on. Being king, if it's anything to do with the whole Bathsheba incident, I knew the law. I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew what would keep me safe, and I broke it. And I didn't listen to anybody. I was like a deaf man, and I didn't speak. I didn't speak up, or I was like a mute who does not open his mouth. Thus I am a man who does not hear, and in whose mouth is no response. I have nothing to say. I can't say anything about what I did. For in you, O Lord, I hope. And here's the place that these kind of things, no matter what degree the sin may be or what the reason for the worry, maybe it's not even sin. Obviously, this isn't saying that all sickness is caused by sin. I mean, in a broad sense, it is. Obviously, we live in a fallen world because of sin, and sickness was part of that, coming into the world to bring death and that kind of thing, suffering. But this, just because somebody gets sick, does not mean that it's directly associated with some sin. It could, but it's not necessarily. So we don't want to take that from this. However, in this situation, David recognizes it, and now David is going to basically throw himself at the grace and mercy of God. He says, "For in you, O Lord, I hope. You will hear, O Lord my God. For I said, hear me, lest they rejoice over me, lest when my foot slips, they exalt themselves against me." So you will hear, O Lord my God, also implies that not only will you hear, but you'll answer. So David doesn't just, think he's throwing up a prayer and God's going to hear it, but he's not going to hear back. He's had a relationship with the Lord. He knows that when he prays, when there's a request, he gets an answer. It may not always be the answer he wants, but he gets an answer. God does answer our prayers. So when we ask, and we ask him to hear us, it should be also with a complete understanding of that we expect him to also answer. There's a little bit of self-preservation in here, which is often David's motive or whatever, but it's also ours. That's why we go to the Lord in desperate situations, right? So hear me, lest they rejoice over me, lest when my foot slips, they exalt themselves against me. For I am ready to fall, and my sorrow is continually before me. For I will declare my iniquity, I will be in anguish over my sin. But my enemies are vigorous, and they are strong, and those who hate me wrongfully have multiplied. Those who render evil for good, they are my adversaries because I follow what is good. That's kind of an interesting statement, especially in verse 20 there. But one, he's still, remembering, I have to come to you. I'm at the bottom of the barrel. I can't function. I can't lead an army. I can't rule a kingdom. But my enemies can. My enemies are strong. They still are vigorous. They have energy. They have everything I don't have. Those who hate me wrongfully have multiplied. So many more now have seen the weakness of this king and are ready to come. And he said, those also who render evil for good, they are my adversaries because I follow what is good. Well, aren't you in this position? And didn't you just say a couple verses before, I'm like a deaf man. I know what was good, but I didn't follow it. I didn't heed the warnings of God. But, again, here's David doing what Saul never did, and that's repenting. And so he does still follow what is good, and that's what we rely on for sure with the new covenant. Is that we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. We follow what's good. We aren't always successful at following what is good, but we know to follow what is good, and we know what good is. Do not forsake me, O Lord. O my God, be not far from me. Make haste to help me, O Lord, my salvation. So basically, just hurry to help me. Don't delay. I'm desperate. I can't do this on my own. And listen, I've prayed this prayer before, not in these exact words, but I can't do this. I've seen my weakness. I've seen my foolishness, and I can't recover from this, and I need you to help me. And knowing that God is our salvation from, in this instance, from ourselves. You know, it's not, this is a personal thing. This isn't just save me from my sin, save me, from your wrath. This is, I've created this situation. I need you to save me from me. So, again, chapter 39 or Psalm 39. Again, this one's to the chief musician, so this one is going to be public to Jethunah. So Psalm 39. Again, this is one that would have been read publicly or sung publicly because it's to the chief musician. And in this instance, Jethunan, I don't know, however you say that. Jeduthun, I think that's right. The Psalm of David, and I didn't write down the references, but he's mentioned in the Kings and Chronicles books. We saw him when we went through there a couple of times. And he's going to be mentioned, I think, again in some of the other Psalms. This kind of rings of Solomon to me. This one sounds very much like Ecclesiastes, dealing with some more inner turmoil, but there's, man is but a vapor, everything's vanity. So you kind of know where Solomon got his bent from for Ecclesiastes. Came from David. So verse 1 says, I said, I will guard my ways, lest I sin with my tongue. I will restrain my mouth with a muzzle while the wicked are before me. I was mute with silence. I held my peace even from good, and my sorrow was stirred up. My heart was hot within me. While I was musing, the fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. All right, so if James chapter 4 doesn't just jump out at you with those first couple of verses there, it should. David is trying to do what James told us to do, and that's to try to control our tongue. And James talked about it being this great, huge wickedness that nobody can tame, and that it can set afire and all kinds of trouble. I'm not going to head there, but it's James chapter 4, 1 through 12, his describing the taming or the inability to tame our tongue. David said, I will guard my ways lest I sin with my tongue. That's a pretty important thing to get into our head, a principle to get into our head. The Bible talks about guarding our eyes, making a determination ahead of time not to look at anything that's unholy. And we skip over this. If we would think about this and say, I'm not gonna speak anything unholy. I'm gonna guard my mouth. I'm gonna be slow to anger. I'm gonna be slow to say anything. It's one of the things that I address with young couples before they get married. You need to, don't just be a reactionary person and just spewed off whatever is in your head. Let it come flying out of your mouth. Keep it under control, so you don't want to hurt somebody. You don't get those back. They may heal, but it's going to take a lot longer to heal. So we gotta watch our mouths. And David he said he made this determination that he was not going to sin with his tongue. And he's saying it like he still has this determination, kind of in a present tense there. I will restrain my mouth with a muzzle while the wicked are before me. So even when the wicked person is in front of me, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to get drawn into arguments. I'm not going to get drawn in and lose my mind and just let all this junk flow, because you just let that flow out of your mouth. you've done nothing when you've acted like the fool you're confronting and just run your mouth. So even when the wicked is before me, I'm not gonna. And then he kind of goes into a past tense here. He says, I was mute with silence. I held my peace even from good. I didn't say anything good or bad. I just didn't say anything. And my sorrow was stirred up. So whatever was going on, he's kind of, well, you get a description of his emotions kind of up and down. My sorrow was stirred up. My heart was hot within me. There was some anger and some brokenheartedness. Something was going on that was personal with somebody else. And it's hard to, I mean, we probably, everybody here is old enough to have had somebody that you looked at as a friend, someone special to you, and then one day you're looking at that person and it's not who you thought it was, and or something's happened to them, that they've changed, some things are coming out of their mouth that you never would have thought would come out of their mouth, and now you're looking at somebody and you're going, this is not a good person anymore. And it makes that roller coaster start, that wave start in your own heart. You're brokenhearted for this. You're hurt because of what's being said. You're hurt for that person, but then you're angry because you've been assaulted, or somebody you know has been assaulted by this person, even just verbally. And it's just this up and down, and you run back and forth between brokenhearted and angry. He said, while I was musing, the fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. And we don't know if he's saying here, I was quiet and I thought. And while I was thinking, it was still burning and churning inside of me. He says, I spoke with my tongue, but we're not sure if it means it was an appropriate time. He waited for an appropriate time to say something, or if he finally just couldn't handle it anymore and just let him have it. You know, it could be either one. It's not real definite there of what's going on. But that's where he's at with this. And I would kind of sense from the rest of this, because we're going to see him, he's going to acknowledge God. He's going to acknowledge the grace and mercy of God in his life, and understand that maybe he needs to have some forgiveness on him too. And so maybe he, at least because the situation didn't end the way that it was desirable, he's confessing his wrong, his part, the wrongness of his part in the whole thing. Lord, make me to know my end, and what is the measure of my days, that I may know how frail I am. Indeed, you have made my days as handbreadths, and my age is as nothing before you. Certainly, every man at his best state is but vapor. Selah. So think about that. He says, Lord, make me to know my end, and what I just want to know how this is. It's kind of like us. Lord, you just come back. I'm just tired. I'm done. What everybody else doesn't screw up, I finish the job for them. I screw it up, you know. And I can't. I look at this stuff and I want to have compassion. I can feel my love grow. Lord, I just want you to come back. Just take us home. And David's kind of at that point. Can I just be done? Can I just go home? My life isn't really, the length of my life, not his life, but the length of his life really isn't anything to you. You know, the hand breaths. When we talk about it, the span of a hand, we talk about from the little finger to, so like this, the tip of the finger, little finger to the thumb. But a hand's breadth that he's talking about here is just the width of the 4 fingers. So it's even shorter than that. That's all my life is. Just hand breaths to you. It's just a couple of these. That's all it is. And we drew a timeline one time for the kids in the youth group that we do on Friday night. And to stretch this out, we were doing it in the dance studio then, so I just took a marker and went all down the length of their mirrors that are on their wall, a whole wall. And we just started, I put this dot, this is where Moses was, this is where Abraham was, this is where, all the way down through the Revelation, all the way to the end. And had that, he had the arrows at the end, because the world likes to think it's just gonna go on forever. Well, in a sense, they're right. So this one was eternity past. This arrow is eternity future, after the judgment. But it was just like, when you do that and you start putting dots on the line, you realize how small somebody's life was. It really wasn't that long. And even if I live to be 100, that's not very long. Especially compared to Adam and Methuselah, 100 years. If I make it to 100 years old, that's nothing compared to those guys. And their life was, nothing. To God, we see in the Bible, to God, a year is as 1,000 days, and 1,000 days is a year. It doesn't mean that maybe there's a hint in there about how long things are going to last, but it's not really the point of that saying. Is that time is nothing to God. He is not confined by time. He's outside of it. And so David's kind of saying that. I know this little bit of time is nothing to you. You can just take me now. I'm ready. I'm ready to be done. Where was I at? Oh, that's the wrong psalm. That's why I went back to the last psalm. I'm going to skip a thing again. Anyways, make me to know, verse 4, make me to know my end, and what is the measure of my days, that I may know how frail I am. And we are pretty frail, aren't we? Doesn't take much to destroy our confidence. It doesn't take much to destroy our bodies. It takes very little effort to just curl up in a ball somewhere and shut down. So my age is as nothing before you. Certainly, every man at his best state is but vapor. At the peak of my physical stature and my ability mentally to function and emotionally to hold it all together, at the peak of that, my best day of my life, and all of that, I'm nothing more than just a breath. That's what he's talking about when it says vapor. I'm just a breath. Surely every man walks about like a shadow. Surely they busy themselves in vain. He heaps up riches and does not know who will gather them. So we're just a shadow. We're not really leaving a mark here. That's where David's at. I think he's abandoned. I'm going to leave a mark. I'm going to leave a legacy. Even though he knows the prophecies of his tribe and that the Judah would be the one through whom the Messiah would come and all of that, he's like, I'm nothing in this. And man doesn't really leave a mark. The whole idea that we're destroying this planet, this biblically just destroys that idea. Man is nothing but a shadow. The overwhelming majority of people on this earth will live and die, and nobody will remember them. Nobody will know they existed. And David's, that realization of that is there, and he's probably feeling it at this instance for whatever reason. This is just me. What am I? I'm a king. So what? I killed a giant. So what? So what? I led armies into battle. Other kings have done the same thing. There's nothing about that. He says they busy themselves in vain to store things up, to build riches. Like that's going to leave a mark, and you don't even know who's going to get them when you die. That's what that means at the end there. He heaps up riches and does not know who will gather them. it's so important to have stuff, and we know that, and especially when we were younger, you heard the phrases, "He who dies with the most toys wins," and other things similar to that. Well, that's ridiculous. To spend your whole life just to amass, so that you think that somebody who's left behind when you die is going to remember you because of the things you left behind, rather than the things you said to them, rather than the things that you taught them. Those are the things that get handed down generation to generation to generation. That's what gets left behind. But even that could only go generations. A couple, 2, 3. I don't have for all the family background stuff that Tracy's done. I don't have any great words from any of my ancestors to live by. Sink or swim. Yeah, the Putnams, they did their part, didn't they? That's horrible. My statement is still true. I don't have anything to live by what they said. They left me nothing, no great heritage. To say, hey, the closest I got was sharing a grandfather with Abraham Lincoln. So, anyhow. There are things that have been said by men. I mean, speaking of Abraham Lincoln, the couple of times I've been to Washington, going to his monument has been my favorite. His big, little rotunda or whatever they call it there. That's still hands down my favorite, because when you go in there, and his speeches are written in the walls in stone, and there's Bible verses in his speeches, and a lot of mention of God. This is my favorite place to go of all of them. Last time I was there, I got to go into the Capitol, so I saw all the great artwork, all the statues that were there, all of that. But still, as far as seeing that kind of stuff, and we didn't see a whole lot because we didn't have a lot of time, going to Lincoln's Memorial again. The 2 times I've been there, I've been to his memorial both times, to his, whatever they call it. Is that what they call it, the Lincoln Memorial? Anyways, been there both times I went there, just to see that. It's not so much about the statue. It's about seeing the words carved in the stone, the things that our country were built on, the men who believed, and it was a part of their life, and because of that, they did things that changed the world that they lived in. They were used by God to change the world that they lived in. And they knew that. It wasn't them. It was a determination to do what they believed God wanted them to do. But I have many more days like David where I'm like, nobody's going to remember me. It's all going to be done. When I breathe my last, I'm gone. If I'm gone before the rapture, nobody's going to know until the trumpet blows, and then I get up out of the grave, because I'm going to see somebody. I'm letting somebody know, hey, it's time to go. Anyways, you heap up riches, and I'm not saying you don't plan for the future. And if you can leave something behind, certainly you want to leave some provision for your kids or something special that they would remember you by. But the chances are it's not gonna go beyond that. It could, and you hope it does, but there's not much, So I leave something to one of my kids. There's no guarantee my grandkids are going to get it, And at this point, I've got kids who are so young that if there's a possibility that I wouldn't even see all of my grandkids be born. Because I'm so young and I'm so old, So who knows? I hope I do. I'm not as desperate or as gone here as David is. Not at the moment, anyways. It's been a better day than his. Yeah, for sure. Verse 7 says, "And now, Lord, what do I do? Or yeah, what do I wait for? What do I wait for? My hope is in you." There it is. That's what we wait for, isn't it? Even still, on the bad days, we go, Lord, just let this be done. Let's just go home. All the signs are there. Everybody's in place in the Middle East. I don't have to see the war break out. I don't have to see the great attack from them. I'm perfectly fine not seeing all of that. It was a day, and there might still be some other days. I'm like, I'd kind of like to see how he defends Israel with that. That's going to be pretty impressive. Then he can blow the trumpet right after it's all done, and we can go home. But I might not see that. I don't have to see that. What do I wait for? My hope is in you. We hear some of the prophecy teachers that we listen to say, our blessed hope is him. It's him coming to get us. David's saying the same thing. My hope is in you. Deliver me from all my transgressions. And it's not even deliver me from my enemies first. It's deliver me from all my transgressions. Deliver me from me. Right? It is more important. Absolutely. Well, we just saw him wrestle with that in the last psalm. There's I know I'm in this position because my enemies are ready to attack because they see me weak, and I'm weak because of my transgressions. So, here, maybe he's feeling better, but he still knows. Deliver me from all of my transgressions. Do not make me the reproach of the foolish. I don't want to go down with people just laughing at me. I mean, it's one thing if a wicked person's laughing because they think that they've won something, but I don't want to go down looking foolish and dishonoring God. Don't make me the reproach of the foolish. I was mute. I did not open my mouth because it was you who did it. Remove your plague from me. I am consumed by the blow of your hand. So he's still there. There's some insinuation there that he's aging because of the sin that he's been covering up. But he's owning it, right? Here he's not necessarily confessing it specifically for all of us to see, just that he's humbling himself before God and saying, deliver me from my transgressions, Lord. I messed this up. So now I pray that you would remove your plague from me. I am consumed by the blow of your hand. When with rebukes you correct a man for iniquity, you make his beauty melt away like a moth. Surely every man is a vapor. There it is again. Selah. Think about it. If you're hearing this, if you're singing this, I want you to think about what I'm saying. Your transgressions will consume you. You'll age. Your body will break down. If you decide to live in, to justify, to hang on to, and we see the whole, you make his beauty, a person who decides to live in this, you make his beauty melt away like a moth. How easy is a moth to kill? And you barely touch them and they can't fly anymore. They're weak. But you make his beauty to melt away. He ages and he becomes weak like a moth. Surely every man is a vapor. Every man is just a breath. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Do not be silent at my tears, for I am a stranger with you, a sojourner as all my fathers were. Remove your gaze from me, that I may regain strength before I go away and am no more. He knows God's looking on him, but he knows that God's not looking on him with favor right now because of what he's done. So that's kind of where that comes to, that whole remove your gaze from me so that I can get my strength back. Some dads learn to perfect a look that will melt their kids without saying a word. And, to the point where sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it, and all of a sudden your daughter's crying, and you're like, what did I do? I didn't say anything. You had to look. The whole reason for perfecting the look is to keep the boys away from my daughter. It's not to crush my daughter, you know. But hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Again, there's that whole, you're going to hear my prayer. I know you're going to hear my prayer and answer. And give ear to my cry. Do not be silent at my tears. You know, don't let me just be like this. Let me hear from you. I don't want to just mourn over this. I want to hear your words. I need you to comfort me. I need to know that I'm not just a stranger, right? He says, for I'm a stranger with you, a sojourner as all my fathers were. The Israelites were described as hard-hearted people all the time. Moses battled with them in the wilderness for 40 years. And as you go through the book of Judges, we saw the judges all battled with the people. And David's like, I don't want to continue in that. I don't want to be a stranger from you. I don't like being estranged from you. He's known what it's like, even as a young man out taking care of his father's sheep, to know the Lord so actively in his life that he would take on a bear and a lion for sheep. You know, he didn't just grab a lame one and throw him at him and then get the rest of the herd out. He killed a bear and a lion over the sheep. He killed a giant for his people. Still a young shepherd boy would walk up to a whole army frozen by one big-mouthed giant and say, who is he? Why are you sitting up here? I mean, there's a whole big implication there, to the point where his brother kind of like, what are you doing? You need to be quiet and get out of here. And David was like, no, you guys letting him talk like that about the army of the Lord. Well, now he's feeling separation from God. He doesn't feel that close fellowship with him because of his transgression. He feels the weight of God's eyes on him. He wants to get his strength back. He wants to walk right again with the Lord. This isn't just, look the other way so I can be strong and I can look better in front of everybody else's. It's just relent so I can be back and have some strength through you. Strengthen me now, not tear me down. Take the weight off and let me walk with you again. And there's a desire here to honor God with his life one more time before I go away and am no more. This isn't about everybody else. This is between God and David. I want to honor you one more time before I'm gone. I don't want to end like this. I don't want to end as a man who was, eaten alive by his sin. I want to honor you one more time. Give me one more opportunity to honor you before I'm gone. I think that's what, or at least part of what it means to walk with the Lord. I just want one more time. Give me one more chance. If we've been out of fellowship with the Lord because of our own foolishness, whether it's whatever the problem is, it doesn't matter. We don't have to commit some great big sin. We don't have to, have an affair with another man's wife and then go kill the guy to try to cover it up to be here. We can have an anger problem that we thought that we beat and have it come back. We can, anything. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be some kind of big vice that grabs a hold of us and something we're addicted to. It could just be just us. Our wicked heart got out of our mouth. It could just be that. Our attitude has been wrong. And you get to this point where we just say, I've fought to try to get back. At first, I fought to try to cover it up. I tried to change myself. I tried to be better, and I'm just blowing it more. And And I don't want to be foolish in front of everybody. So help me. Help me. And don't just pull me out of this, but let me be strong again for you before I go. And trust the Lord with whatever measure that is. I don't know that David was expecting some great big battle against a national enemy again to put down. Maybe it was, let me finish gathering the things for your house that Solomon will build. Maybe it was, let me have a little more time with my son who is going to reign in my place so I can put into him. And you can see when we go through, as we've gone through the Psalms and in David's life in the Kings and the Chronicles, you can see in some of Solomon's writings David's influence in Solomon's life. He spent some time with him. He may have blown it with Absalom and Amnon and all the others, but he had some kind of influence into Solomon that was positive. And maybe not even just so much positive, but a reaction to transgression here we see in Solomon in Ecclesiastes. But there's some things in Proverbs, as you read through Proverbs, you can go, you know what? David taught him that. And maybe that's all this request is at the end. Just let me one more time before I go. It doesn't have to be anything anybody else is going to remember. Just between you and me, I just want to do good for you before I go. That's how I want to finish. I want to finish well. And this is what Paul told us to do, right? Finish well. Paul was going to finish well, and he knew he was going to finish well. I want to have the same kind of confidence when I'm going and I'm about ready to go to sleep, no matter how it is, when I'm about ready to pass, especially if it's not going to be in the rapture. I want to have the same confidence that Paul had at the end when he told Timothy, I'm being poured out like a drink offering. I'm finished the race. I'm finishing my race, and I'm going to finish it well. You can see that in his letters to Timothy and Titus. He knew the end was coming. I don't even think we know if Timothy ever got to Paul before he was beheaded. But, I want to have that kind of confidence when I'm going. I want to have the same kind of confidence my grandpa had. To sit up in a bed, to call me to the bedside and tell me I needed to pray for everybody, just to pray. He didn't even say pray for everybody. He said just pray. He wanted to hear somebody pray. And when I said amen, to just pick it up right after me and pray and pray basically a blessing on his family. Pour out your love and your grace and your mercy on those who are here, those who can't be, and the one coming home. I want to have that kind of confidence. Those are basically his last words. I want to have last words like that if I'm going to have them. And I think that's what David was asking for. Just, even if it's something that simple. I think he was probably older. I think he'd seen a lot. His transgressions had cost him a lot. There were consequences even after he confessed in the way that his boys and his all of his kids acted and reacted. I mean, even at his almost deathbed, another son tries to get into the place of Solomon. So that's where we want to be. Whatever is bugging us, whatever we struggle with day to day, we want to go to bed at night and say, just forgive me. And if we feel like sometimes that happens. You wake up and you're like, this has been a long 2 weeks. Haven't read my Bible, haven't really prayed, haven't talked to any of my friends who are believers. I haven't asked anybody to pray for me. It's no wonder I feel so cruddy, And I haven't talked to the Lord, so let's start there. And it's a similar thing. Lord, I'm tired. I'm ready to go home. And I would just as soon do that. But if I'm going to be here, then let me finish well. Whether it's 10 more minutes or 10 more days or 10 more years or whatever. Let me finish it out well. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. And thank you for the encouragement in the Psalms of David. Lord, thank you for a man who would pour out his heart in such a way that you could and would desire to preserve it all these thousands of years later and bring it to us so that it can affect our heart. And while David may have been short-sighted and just asking for one more moment, David, in his obedience to write and to pour out, has affected more people than he could have ever imagined, more people than we could imagine. And so, Lord, even though we are frail, we're weak, you've assured us that in our weakness, you are strong. Your strength shows in our weakness. Because we cannot do this on our own. We can't live a righteous life on our own. We cannot influence anybody towards you on our own. We need you. We need you day to day. Minute by minute most days. So thank you for promising to be here. And Lord, I pray that we would be able to walk in that confidence, knowing that you're here with us. And Lord, give us more opportunities to honor you most of all. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.